to watch it from picture to picture deep the sun to down to left to sun. I get to say to watch it from picture to picture deep the sun to down to left to sun.
Thank you all for your practice. It's good to be here. Nice to see you all. Recently, I'm not used to hearing myself so loudly. Recently, I've been thinking a lot about habits and talking about habits. So I want to continue in that vein, because what I'm finding is that they just completely rule our lives. So our habits are really quite powerful, and if we don't recognize them, then we're always led around by them. There's this kind of shadow side to us. Each of us has some darker, maybe hidden side to us. Even if it's not displayed, it still exists within us. Like everything, there's these two aspects, as in day and night. We also have those aspects in our confused mind. And a lot of our habits are based on these very confused states, coming out of this, maybe we could call it aggression. We seem to have some mental aggression. And maybe it pops up every once in a while, unexpectedly. Somebody says something to you and all of a sudden you like leap. You turn into a wolf or some, cougar. That was my leaping. You turn into something that you didn't expect all of a sudden. And it could have been something quite small that somebody said, really didn't justify that kind of reaction. So then we know, oh, there's something here, there's something going on in me. And sometimes people go to therapy and they maybe even go to a Jungian analyst and go for years talking about this subconscious, this hidden aspect, trying to bring it up into the consciousness, up into our consciousness. But all of us know it's there, right? Okay, good. Phew. There are people who bring this out in us, and we project onto them our shadow. They do something that's annoying, maybe that strikes us as rude, that hits us in a place that maybe we're very sensitive. Maybe our parents always did something that we became sensitive to, and then we recognize that in somebody else. And then there's the ability I was starting to say they have the ability, but they don't really have the ability to trigger it. It's just triggered. And it's triggered in our minds. So when I say we project, what I'm saying is whatever's going on in our consciousness, we pretend it's happening based on what somebody else is doing. So we project it. Just like a movie projector is projecting images on a screen, we project our confused mind onto other people. It's quite fascinating how we do this. And then we talk about them in negative ways. And there are some people we don't want to hang out with. That's probably very true. But right now I'm just talking about this confused mind and how the confused mind works. And this shadow side of us. So in Tibetan Buddhism, we're not trying to get rid of the shadow side of us. We're not trying to be good and look a certain way and, be holy beings. That's not the point. Now there are holy beings that arise out of this practice, that is true. But that's not the reason they started. I want to become holy. I don't even know what that is. That's probably somebody's projection. People that we perceive as holy are just super ordinary. Like just completely themselves, completely embodying their true nature, embodying their heart. It's living from that place of being truly themselves. But let me go back to aggression. So we have this hidden, somewhat hidden side to us. And there are several practices in Tibetan Buddhism where we can invite that hidden aspect to be with us. Like bring it into the light of day. So we can acknowledge that it's there. Things we leave unacknowledged fester. They fester in our consciousness. Maybe you've had a splinter or something that you left in your hand or somewhere else, and you weren't able to dig it out, and then it festers. And sometimes if you leave it, it might even calcify. So it makes like a rock. It becomes hard and inflexible. Now this can happen in our consciousness in some sense. These things that are festering, they get crystallized into these habits and beliefs. And these projections, they seem so real. It's like that hologram of Michael Jackson the other day. Did you see that on TV? Oh yeah, they had a Michael Jackson performing, and it was a hologram. It looked quite real. In fact, scientists are now wondering if we aren't all a hologram at the edge of the universe. I don't know exactly how they came to that, but I think that's quite interesting. In fact, the hologram's quite interesting. I don't understand how it works, but it's like seemingly three-dimensional. It appears three-dimensionally, and that every part of the hologram is the whole. That's just a little food for cocktail parties. One of the ways we can work with this kind of aggression, and that aggression let me digress for a moment here. This aggression can work against ourselves. And it often does. It works against us. You know, so much self-hatred in this society. But we can invite this shadow in. And it doesn't have to be a very ritualized invitation. It's not like really inviting the boogeyman into our room. Some people kind of feel like it is sometimes. But it's there all along. It's like the chest of drawers that's sitting in your room. Every time you walk into your room, you don't jump away from that. Huh? So it's the same with this. This is always here. It's with us. It's part of our expression. So in the beginning, it's important to be able to look at it fearlessly. And these are the things that I have in me. You know? Sometimes sometimes I notice when people blow their nose, you know, they look at their Kleenex. For some reason, they want to know what's there. I think they can anticipate it has something to do with boogers, because that's, you know, what they're working with. So when we may not want, you know, to look at this, like it's this in our heart, in our psyche. Psychic boogers. And you know, we may not want to look, or we might just want to sneak a peek real quick, and so nobody else sees, right? But we should look. We should look, and not be afraid to look. The Buddha says, I love this, I use it, I say it frequently. He says, you know, those things that we think we're keeping hidden from others, it's like we're wearing a dead animal around our neck. It's that obvious. They're not really so hidden. They show up in our actions. They show up in our body. They show up in our grimaces, in our eye rolling. They show up in our attitudes, our beliefs. Right? Part of getting to know the landscape of our mind is also getting to know, you know, the rocks, those hard places, getting to know the weeds, getting to know the dung, the fertilizer, getting to know all the crevices, all the parts of our consciousness that may not be right on the surface, but they're lurking. They're lurking in the background. And they're actually driving us. And that's really all we need, is to just have an awareness of it. When we start to shine this light of awareness in these dark places, what happens? They become light. We become aware of them by shining this light of awareness on them. And already they start the process of dissolution. I think it was Jingmei Lingpa, but don't quote me on this, who said, you know, nothing can stand in the face of investigation. It all starts to fall apart. If we really start to look at any one thing, how we thought it was when we first began to investigate it, is completely a story. It's an illusion. I remember I've used the table as an example of that. As a table is used, or a cart is used in Tibetan Buddhism, to look at how we misunderstand reality, how we really are very much on the surface of our lives. And we're on the surface of our consciousness also, just running off of the fumes of habit. So we're going to see these things arise, especially at the beginning. At the very, very beginning of our meditation practice, we may feel a lot of relief. You know, finally we're having some time to be with quietness or ease or some restfulness. Maybe that's your experience. Some people experience this whole cacophony of mental noise, just unbelievable mental noise that they hadn't experienced before. And then it's projected onto the idea of meditation. But anytime we become quiet, we hear all the little noises. We start to hear the little noises of our consciousness. Like now I can hear a little fan in the background. Earlier I could hear the elevator, the voices, distant voices, the sound of a car every once in a while. Yeah, and the same when we sit with our consciousness, we start to see all the habits that come up, all the beliefs, all the chit-chat, all the talk, all the neuroses, all the stuff, the aggression starts to arise. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's perfect. This is what we're trying to do, is trying to get to know ourselves a little bit. Trying to get to know this wild and moving mind. This mind is always moving, it seems. That's its nature. That's what it does. Just like the ocean moves, our mind moves. And we're not trying to stop the movement. We just want to take a look at it. How is it driving us? How do we behave based on our conditioned mind? Is it working to our advantage in that we're becoming more loving and kind? Or is it working to our disadvantage? Is it working to society's disadvantage? Somebody told me recently, this person I know, he's a Buddhist, and he practices, she said, and he manipulates people, and he does negative things all the time. He's very self-absorbed. And my response was, he's not practicing yet. He's not a Buddhist yet. To be a Buddhist, really, in the ultimate sense, is to be nobody. And nobody does that. An ego does that. But not this pure beingness. That's not how that works. So if you want to gauge your meditation, you can see, are you becoming more compassionate, more kind? I don't care if you could fly around this freaking room. If you are not more compassionate and kind, who cares? What does that matter? Fly, go, right? What good does that do? The birds do that all the time. It's nothing special, unless you're using it to benefit others. Now, if you could fly and bring me back a cheesecake, maybe that's useful. But, to have these, there's a lot of people that want these great meditative experiences. And I've been having a heck of a time because I've been looking on the internet for some pictures of people meditating, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to use some of you because I think you're more genuine. What I see is this. Spare me. Every picture's like this. It's like, come on. And that's, it may, I don't know where that comes. I don't know where those mudras come from. Maybe it's in a different tradition, but it's not in the Buddhist tradition to sit like that. So there are mudras in the Buddhist tradition, but that's not one of them. So I see it again and again. I'm like, I can't use that picture. I can't use that picture because it's not real. It's not what we're doing. Yeah, the position is important. I don't want you to think that it's not, because the position is quite important. It allows us this straight spine, allows the natural energies of our body to flow. And then we can engage more readily with our mind. If we're sitting like this, yeah, it's not so good. It doesn't have the flow, the energy. It doesn't have the connection to mind that we will need. One of the practices to illuminate this is whenever we see something like this in our consciousness, some aggression or is a judgment or some real hostility, is not to blame it on somebody else, not to project it, but to just see, here it is. Remember when the Buddha was sitting under the Bodhi tree and Mara came to him? He didn't get out his, throwing stars or anything like that. I don't know if he had throwing stars, probably not. He didn't get any of those things out to throw at Mara. He just transformed his experience. So as spears were coming towards him, he transformed it into flowers. So this is kind of a parable to tell us that when we have these negative states of mind, we can see that the basis of them is also empty. They're not like concrete things. This idea of festering and this idea of concreteness is part of our habitual mind. In the ultimate sense, it doesn't exist. So when they arise, if we just let the energy of that be with us, but not project it onto somebody else. So imagine you're at a stoplight and the person in front of you is doing their makeup, or they're on the phone, or they're turned around getting a beer out of the back. I don't know, whatever it is. And they're not moving forward, and you can just sit with your annoyance. Don't honk the horn unless there's going to be an accident or something. You need to get their attention. But just sit with the annoyance for a while. Instead of projecting it and saying something, my sister used to call those people clowns. She said, oh my God, this clown ahead of me. Until her toddler started saying something about the clown, Come on, clown, get going. And she looks back there, ooh. When you hear it out of a toddler's mouth, maybe that's gives you some perspective on what you're doing. So we can sit with the energy of this experience. And all it is energy. There's a feeling, there's a movement in our body. We can feel the energy of these things. And in that way, we really get to know the energy of it. And we don't have to freak out, and we don't have to think it's a demon or Mara or any of these things. We just notice the energy of it. And through that noticing, the energy will arise and the energy will dissipate, just like a wave. It arises and it dissipates. So then we have a really different relationship with these shadowy parts of us. We may not always be able to do that, but we can reflect after we've lost our cool. Oh, I really lost my cool. I really believed my thought. We can say that to ourselves. I really believed my thought. Rather than saying, that guy or that woman is such a bleep, 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 right? Instead, I really believed my thought. Huh, isn't that interesting? And then we'll have a little less attachment to all of our thoughts. We won't get so caught up when the thought of, harm arises. That somebody said something to us that was harmful. And we'll be, okay, I can be with this. I can be with the energy of this. It's like we can be with the energy of a thunderstorm. Yeah, it's really powerful. A thunderstorm is so powerful. But it's also quite beautiful. And we can sit with that. And that thunderstorm actually changes the atmosphere, doesn't it? And it smells so wonderful after. It feels so fresh and new after a thunderstorm. So like this, when these thunderstorms occur in our heart, what we have been identifying as negative, all these things that we've been identifying as negative, we can just be with them and let them arise and purify themselves is really what's happening. They come up and they purify themselves if we can be with them, if we can stand the discomfort. Because in the beginning it's going to be uncomfortable. Why would it be uncomfortable? Oh, because we haven't done this before. Just like, scuba diving for me was quite uncomfortable in the beginning. It scared me to death. Jumping into the water and then being underwater and looking up and thinking, I'm breathing underwater, oh my God. And at first you start to breathe, you're using up air like crazy. You thought you were going to get a 30-minute dive in, but you get 15 because you suck down all this air and then your stomach's like this. So we're like that. We're just uncomfortable in the beginning with being with negative emotions without projecting them onto somebody else. So this is something we can practice in our everyday life. It can be one of the things that we do that really transforms us. There's one thing to sit on the meditation cushion and give loving kindness to everybody, and there's another when they're in our face, right? Or they're saying bad things about us or doing things. I heard a story once where a man attacked a woman, and he threw her up against a wall. And I think all she could say was, "Om Mani Padme Hum," and he just let her go and took off. Now that may not always work. She just came out with mantra. That's all she could think to do. And maybe he thought she was possessed or something. Oh, I'm leaving this behind. And sometimes we can do that with ourselves too. We can have something like a mantra or something that we say to ourselves. It doesn't have to be in Tibetan. It doesn't even have to be traditional. It doesn't have to be Om Mani Padme Hum or Om Gate Gate Par Gate Parsam Gate Bodhisvaha. It can just be, this is just a thought. This is the expression of a confused mind. Or we could just laugh and see it all as this display of awareness itself. We all got it. It's hanging around our neck. And sometimes it stinks up the place, sometimes we have like a little shawl over it, and people don't see it maybe as readily. But it can be completely transformed just through the practice of awareness. Thank you. Let's dedicate the merit. By this merit, may all attain perfect awakening, rising above all forces of negativity, going beyond the turbulence of birth, old age, sickness, and death. May all beings be free from the ocean of samsara.